welcome to our January Happy New Year edition of Sports Highlights. Glad you're with us. Our program since February of 1992, and of course next month our 30th anniversary right here on Cox Cable 47, FiOS 17, all over social media, and then NPSTV.com. Sports Highlights is an interview show right here, produced 11 times a year, as well and encored on TV and online. Our first guest today is Chris Sambus, who went to Kecoughtan High School, a local tennis player. Chris, good to see you.
Thank you for asking me to be here.
Absolutely, Chris. And how did you get involved in tennis?
I suspect that if I can recall, it started back in high school, overseas. I was born and raised overseas, as you know. I was at the American Academy in Cyprus and played a little bit, not very much actually. Came to the States, sort of gave it up for a few years, and then when I joined the company at Newport News, we had ladders, A, B, C, D. So it was a whole lot of fun back then. We started with the C and D ladders and then progressed to the B and A ladder. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of camaraderie with the guys, off hours, of course, at the end of the day, and on weekends and all that. It was fun.
Yeah, tennis is a lifetime sport. And back in the 70s, when I first started playing, it was really popular when you had people like Connors and Chris Evert and John McEnroe.
Yep, and I met most of those guys. We used to go years ago to the Legg Mason Classic up in D.C. prior to it was a before the U.S. Open, and I met Sampras up there and Roddick and those guys. It was fun. It was our annual trip with Bob Baby-Dagis and the wives, of course, and we made a whole week out of it.
Absolutely.
It was very enjoyable.
And tennis, too, is important. We had our last show in December, we talked about pickleball, how racquetball and pickleball and tennis, are always evolving. And it's a great sport to keep the heart rate going. There's a lot of factors to exercise, to just keep moving as a young person and as a senior.
Well, it was a whole lot easier as a younger person.
Yeah.
As we get older, of course, I push myself to get out there, and I love the outdoors anyway. And I push myself to get out there and enjoy the outdoors, enjoy the camaraderie, enjoy the game. And I do most of my playing now on clay courts. It's a little more forgiving on the body and the ankles and whatnot. So, but again, it's a lot of fun. Enjoy the weather, enjoy the camaraderie of people, and we belong to a couple of clubs here locally, the Hilton Club, and played with the Newport News Huntington Park for many years while I was staying with the company as well. Something that keeps you going. You have your normal aches and pains as we get older as a consequence of running around on the courts, but nonetheless, a couple of ibuprofens and we're back in business.
Absolutely. Talking to Chris Sambus, local tennis player, and Chris has played in a lot of different places over the years, and tennis has got some strategy involved, and like you said, doubles as you get older is a little bit more popular than singles. Chris has also played in the Dr. Mary V. Bickaveris Memorial Tennis Tournament several years, named after my mother. We've actually played. In fact, my family's known Chris's family forever, but I first played Chris in the Bahamas.
Yes, we did. We were at a convention down there.
The HEPA tournament.
It was the HEPA tournament. The American Hellenic Education and Progressive Association had its national conference convention in Nassau. I want to say that was back in 1991, 92.
91, yeah. 91, yeah.
And we were staying right next door to the hotel, if you remember, and that was our first time together. Yes.
I remember the former Newport News Mayor Joe Frank always talking about the quality of life, but the quality of life there is excellent by the water.
For sure, it was an enjoyable trip actually.
Yeah. What advice would you give to people that want to first of all play tennis and then get active with an active lifestyle? You always hear about young, old, healthy diet, healthy lifestyles. The choices you make when you're younger can evolve to when you get older.
Well, as we get older, we have to be mindful of our diet and our health in general, even as youngsters. I mean, that's a given, especially in today's environments. But as you get older, you find yourself having different tastes, if you wish. But at the same time, you have to make sure that you're keeping a healthy diet if you're going to progressively maintain good health for the duration. And I think that's important, whether you're young or old. it matters how well you take care of your body, and that includes physical activity as well as eating habits and the food that you put in your mouth and all that.
Right.
Very important that I think the advice that you would give the youngsters today is to have a regimen that encompasses both like the physical activity and also the awareness of your own health in terms of what we put in our bodies. I think that's important, and it becomes even more so important as we get a little older.
And also, too, the mental being cognitive, too. I mean, a lot of times we take that for granted. Talk about you're an audiologist. I mean, talk about how important it is just for the mental clarity, because the eyes, the ears, the nose, the throat, it's all part of your well-being.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I find that when I finish a game, even when I'm huffing and puffing on the court, and then thereafter, when you get home and shower and try to rest, that your cardio is up there, you know. And I make an effort to always check my pressure, check my pulse when I get home after the games, and just to see where I stand in terms of my vital signs. And yeah, it's important, and of course, and you feel the sharpness in terms of your mindfulness and whatnot. With any activity, not just tennis, with any activity. So it's critical again that we realize and preach this to the younger generation as well, to stay active, because it does indeed impact our mental capacity as well.
Now, you talk about hearing. What advice would you give? How do you improve that? Is that something that you really can improve, or are there I mean, loud noise is one thing you always hear. I'm not a big fan of loud noise or big loud concerts, and you always hear about wearing headphones at race car places. What advice would you give? Because a lot of sporting events are very loud.
Yes, they are. I will never forget many years ago, we were at the Coliseum at some concert, and I was sitting next to a young couple with a small child. I would say the child was no more than about 3-4 months.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And the music was so loud that, you know, to me, and I'm sure to the general population, but the child was crying. The mother couldn't do anything to stop the child from crying. And I said, listen, do you have something to put over the kid's ears? She said, what do you mean? I said, I explained to her. And they did. They went out and found some earmuffs and put over the child in order to stop. You know, high noise exposure, it can impact our hearing over a long period of time. Also, abrupt exposure to loud sounds, like an explosion or firearms particularly, can traumatize the ear with a single blast. And it's critical to maintain good hearing health for the duration, because you don't realize that you're losing it, especially as a consequence of exposure, long-term exposure to injurious levels of noise, such as an industrial setting, for instance. You know, once the damage is done, the damage is there to stay, and the damage is permanent. Now, there are many factors that can impact our hearing, of course: heredity, trauma, infections, drugs of different kinds, industrial exposures to noise. And it doesn't have to be industrial noise exposure. It can be social noise exposures. You know, people in the military, for instance, or people that are out there cutting wood day in and day out, or chopping wood with machinery and whatnot. The drillers and the chippers that you see breaking the roadways. You know, all those things add up.
They do.
And ultimately, the damage to the ear, it's permanent in that regard. It's non-reversible, and as a consequence of that, it becomes an issue of difficulty in communication. That's why, you know, and of course you got the normal age process. You know, as we get older, we're going to lose some hearing, like everything else, gradually over a period of years. And why add to it if you can, at least from the standpoint of exposures to noise, whether on the job or off the job, we have the means today and the know-how and the smarts to minimize it and get away from it, you see. I'll never forget some years ago with a company at Newport News Shipbuilding, where people were out there in production areas, young people, and they were wearing the earbuds under their earmuffs. Well, when you're in a loud environment, it's injurious to your hearing. You're wearing hearing protection to minimize that exposure, and at the same time, you're putting earbuds underneath, so you're actually amplifying the sound in your ear, directly in your ear, more so than you would otherwise. So, and that's something that people just don't think about. You know?
Right. We're talking to Chris Amos. That's a great point because sports is all about sight, sound, mind awareness. Tackle football, if you can't hear the player coming, it can affect you mentally as well. Then because of your hearing loss, you're affected by that too. But swimmers have a problem with that too. Swimmer's ear, Chris, there's nothing more painful. And I've been in jacuzzis, pools, and the ocean at the same time. And I come out and I wonder 24 hours later, why is my ear hurting? I'm going to the pharmacist and getting these special drops to put in my ears because I like to swim.
Yeah. External otitis is the medical term for a swimmer's ear, and it's actually an irritation or an inflammation of the walls of the external ear canals. They get oversaturated with water, and especially dirty water.
Yeah.
You know, and that flares up an infection to the point where you get swelling of the tissues in the ear canal, and that can be indeed painful. And it can be resolved, of course, medically with drops and sometimes a little wick in the ear with medication, medicated wick can resolve the issue. But nonetheless, it's something that you're aware of. So if it's going to happen to you and you're susceptible to that, what you do, put some earplug in your ear before you get in the water.
Yeah, but I was told not to put anything in your ears. You see these earbuds, I'm like, what am I saying? I mean, what am I hearing here? But finally, for 55 years, we've had the Newport News Greek Festival next year. Chris has been a chairman. I've worked with him doing the marketing for the last 15 years. And Chris, that's a big event, something you're very proud of and we're all proud of and the whole community is proud of.
Yes, it is. It's an annual event that's been going on since 1967, I believe. And we don't do it for the Greek community. Obviously, we do it for the community at large.
Right.
You know,
Plural.
Plural.
Yeah.
Correct. And it's something that the community looks for. Of course, it's a fundraiser for the church, but at the same time, the proceeds are meant to support a whole lot of other activities and organizations in the immediate area. So we're very proud of that, and very proud that the community supports the event year after year. Of course, the last couple of years have been sidelining us in terms of the big event that we had in the spring, but hopefully come next year, God willing, we'll be able to, if the pandemic is on its way out,
Yeah.
we can go ahead and do a big event again.
Yeah, it takes a whole village. Chris, thank you. All the best to you and Hope and your family, your kids and your grandkids. And you got Ron Rivera, you know, with the Skids. He was with Carolina for a long time. But anyway, always a pleasure. Chris, good to see you.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you very much.
And Happy New Year right there. Chris will stay right there. And of course, our next guest will be Chad Smith, brand new Warwick High School Director of Athletics. Sports highlights in January will continue after these messages.
You're watching NNPS TV. Catch sports highlights on Mondays at 7, 2, and 7, and on Saturdays and Sundays at 9 a.m. Visit us online at nnpstv.com to view all your favorite episodes. NNPS TV, watching education happen.
And welcome to our second segment, our January 2022 edition of Sports Highlights. Hope you enjoyed our first guest, Chris Zambis, as he talked about tennis and fitness for the mind, body, and soul for young and old. Chad Smith is the brand new, and I mean brand new, athletic director at Warwick High School. Been on the job for a few months. Chad, good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Greg.
Now, when you and I first chatted, you were at Thomas Nelson. Now,
Yes.
how did that all change?
Was at Thomas Nelson from 2011 to 2018 as the coordinator of athletics, and I took a big leap and took an opportunity to become the director of athletics at Frederick Community College in Frederick, Maryland, and was there for 2 years. And then COVID came. They made some administrative changes, and came back home because my wife is originally from Newport News. Matter of fact, she was a cheerleader here at Menchville.
Very nice.
And so just came back home and then found this opportunity.
It seems like you've found your home at Warwick High School. They need stability. All schools do, and you provide that stability.
Yes, yes. One of the things when you're looking at over 25 sports, you need someone that's constantly there to be able to help the students first with their classes and the competition. So that's one of the main things that I'm here for, to guide the ship and for us to celebrate in terms of not only within the classroom, but bringing things back to when Warwick was particularly winning. So we're hoping to get that tradition back in place.
Before we talk about football and basketball and some of the revenue sports, as a kid I played for Ferguson, and we used to play at Warwick, and we had pickup games. So I'm glad that you've done some resurfacing with the courts. That's not been an easy process, though.
Right. Right now we're in the process of completing the refurbishment of our tennis courts. 2 of them immediately next to the building already. Individuals have been on that court, those 2 courts right now. But we are hosting the Region A4 finals. Now we'll be at Huntington, but the first in terms of individuals will be on those new courts. And it's been some time, and we needed to get those courts.
And there's
in
no way
place.
you could host without having the new courts.
Right.
So it has to meet certain standards.
Right. So the school system saw it fit, and got brand new courts. Look
Now,
good.
as the first job on duty, you kind of re-evaluate every sport there. You kind of go through the checklist and kind of like, okay, here's all the women's sports, here's all the men's sports, here's the head coaches, here's the tenure, here's what's got to improve. What is your mindset?
Well, and looking at making not changes, but adjustments and adapting to what we need to do in terms of, let's say men's basketball, but that's the college level. Boys basketball, looking to definitely get some consistency there.
Yeah.
There have been some challenges at times previously before, and so I'm here now to, again, guide that ship so that Warwick basketball can get back to one of the premier teams on the peninsula.
Yeah, talk about tradition Warwick had. I mean, Nate and I have discussed it. We've been doing the basketball games there for years. Jim Harvey coached there, then Ben Moore. They were there for decades. Both of them were. Harvey coached, Anthony Solomon went to Virginia, and Ben Moore coached a litany of great players too, the late Ben Moore. And of course, we did the volleyball game recently on the Ben Moore court that you honored him recently.
Right. This past weekend, we called it Super Saturday. We started off with our girls basketball. They had a scrimmage against Booker T. Washington, and then the highlight of the day, we had the floor dedication in honor of Coach Ben Moore. And then afterwards, Thomas Nelson had their first home season, and what we did to look at that, to commemorate Ben's service, I had an opportunity to hire his son prior to my departure at Thomas Nelson, Chris Moore. He coached his first game, won our first official game on the Ben Moore court. They played Bryan and Stratton College. And then later that night, we had our state quarterfinals for volleyball, boys volleyball. Not too successful. We had 5 sets and lost the final set to Colonial Heights.
Right.
So it was a long day, but it was a great day as well.
And of course, we televise your volleyball on the Ben Moore court, so the public's already seen it already.
Right. This station has this year done a great deal in terms of football games. Had that, I would call it a classic, that overtime game against Woodside High School in the NPS did our homecoming. And that was very live. We had a very large crowd, and then we got coverage for our boys volleyball because boys volleyball, again, state quarterfinals, and then our girls team won in terms of regionals.
Yeah, talking to Chad Smith, Warwick High School Director of Athletics, and you see the football playoffs. We're in January now, so the season's over. And let's talk about that. There's so many different divisions. Back in the day, it was tough to make the postseason. Now it's almost you're rewarded on mediocrity. Back in the day, I remember a team that went 9-1 did not make the postseason. Wow. It's great for these kids, but at the same time, you want to teach them life lessons. To go 1-9 is not good. You know, you still want to win. It's how you play the game, sportsmanship. We get all that, but you still want to have success.
Yes, definitely. In looking at this year, this past year, we were 6th in the region, and we came up short against Warwick High School. Played them twice this year, and we thought it was going to be the big payback. But I do see when you have teams under 500, you know, coming from the NJCAA, you know, below 500, you weren't moving forward. But I do see giving students an opportunity to compete. And as we can see, sometimes some teams turn things around.
Oh yeah,
that were below 500, and we're still in the region playoffs. Not in Region 4, but I do know some other schools that move forward with a below 500.
And it was really challenging this past spring because really there was no 20 football season. It was the spring of 21, and before you blinked, it was the fall of 21. So that was extra challenging as well, although they didn't play as many games in the spring.
Right, I had an opportunity because I worked with the Peninsula Football Officials Association. Didn't get any high school games, but I did JV. Did JV games and a couple of middle school games in the spring, and then turn around. You know, they ended in April, May, and students were starting right in July. Yeah, so that was pretty big.
And sports is always about academics, athletics, and activities. And like you said, the women's basketball program has been very consistent under one coach. The football team, Corey Harrison, has been there for several years. You want to get the boys basketball up to par, and I guess some of the other sports, and that's your goal. And sometimes some coaches coach both sports or several sports.
Right. I look at the fact of classes, competition, and then consistency for us to celebrate. And due to the challenges that we've had in terms of the turnover with basketball, we need to have those 3 things in place. We need to make sure that their student athletes doing well in their classes, and they translate what they're doing in the classes on that field of competition. From that, students are then able to celebrate. We have some students right now who are doing well. We do have a new coach. Jason Booth, he is a product of Menchville High School, played football and basketball, and then we also have Demetrius Duke Phipps, who was my student when I worked at Woodside. Prior to getting into athletics, I was a guidance counselor at Woodside High School. And to see this young man now, he's our head JV coach. So with both of them, they know what it takes to win the Peninsula. They know what it needs to guide and direct the program. And so I'm very happy, and I'm looking forward to working with both those young men.
Yeah, and especially those sports, they provide such great entertainment for the public. They have to realize that they are showcased.
Tuesday, Friday nights.
Yeah.
Tuesday, Friday nights. So Friday nights, we want to make sure that we're bringing, just not individuals from Warwick High School, but anyone from the Peninsula coming and saying, hey, you're going to see a quality game tonight.
Yeah, you've always been very consistent, and uniforms are also very important too, because the image is important of what they're wearing and so forth. And Warwick's had great school colors in red, gold, and white, a little maroon there. What is your thought on home and away uniforms for football and basketball, as far as colors and matching and all that stuff?
Well, I do know in terms of when we're looking at whites, when you look at home and away. One of the things that I want to make sure now coming into the history of Warwick High School, as you just stated, there's been this thing of cardinal red, maroon, gold. We know the consistency is gold.
Right.
And so since starting the job, I've been really talking to what I call the seasoned veterans. I've been told it's been maroon. And so in terms of looking at home and away, for us, I'd like home to be white, and away we take the gold, maroon and gold. So
and the same thing for the girls and the boys too, right?
Keeping consistency.
Because you're the AD, you can make that call. I mean,
yes.
So that's very important. I think in football too, what I like about high school football, there's no names on the back of the jerseys. It's all about the front of the jerseys.
Right.
And you keep the helmets pretty clean too.
Yes. We just got our refurbished this year. Last year really, in terms of gold, and we're looking at putting our new logo. So I know a lot of people like our logo. Now we have kind of like it looks like a pirate, but it is the Raider. It is the Raider with the big W in the front. So
Right. And I've seen the W. I've seen no logo at all. Right. This
Right.
past fall had no logo.
Right,
Correct.
yeah.
So sometimes less is more too, as well. Talking to Chad Smith, what advice would you give to an 8th grader that wants to play varsity sports? Because that's the funny thing about varsity is like you can start in the 9th grade playing football, basketball, tennis, whatever, or you can do the I call it the kind of the learning route, JV 8th, 9th, and 10th, varsity, junior, and senior. There's pros and cons to both.
Well, in looking at with 8th graders, that's something that we're trying to improve. One, letting them know that there is an opportunity for them, and that we, get into the middle schools to let the students know that there's an opportunity to play at the JV level. 8th graders are not allowed to play varsity. But 2, getting into the recreation centers, having our coaches to go over to meet with the students, to show them opportunities and giving examples. And so going back and referring back to Jason Booth and Demetrius Duke Phipps, they came through the Newport News public school system. And so it's really showing a transition of this is where you are now, this is where you can be later. And
Right.
so we want to make sure that it's promoted as an opportunity, as I stated earlier, that this is, again, where you're at right now, but you never know where you're going to be later.
Right. The last 22 months have been a perfect example of that because of COVID. I mean, you're talking about there was no basketball season
Right.
last year. How challenging was that?
Definitely from a perspective that students lost that time on the court.
Yeah.
And so that camaraderie, that also communication. And so that's what we're impressing upon our coaches now. How do we transition from a time where it wasn't anyone's fault, just something beyond everyone's control. We had to take time out for safety. But now that we're gradually coming back in, fans are in, how do we transition back to where we're communicating, where we're working collaboratively together?
You talk about that communicating. Mental counseling is so important. I mean, football is a grind. I mean, every sport is because there's travel involved. You're away from your family. You have to eat. You have to function. What about the mental part of it? And I guess you've been around kids long enough. You can tell when something's wrong.
I would definitely have to say high school is probably the more challenging because you could have a student that's in class starting at about 7:15 and then leaving school 5:30, 6 o'clock.
And later on a football night.
Right. And so
What about dinner and all that stuff?
Right. And so we provide, after school, but they're still, these are young people
Yeah.
that have a metabolism that's very high. So it's very important that I tell the coaches that it's not just about the wins and losses, it's about the wins and losses that's going on in their lives.
Right.
And so it's important in terms, I look at student athlete development is pivotal, whether it be college, professional, but it's very important in terms of high school because again, they learn lessons in terms of time management, how to deal with crisis, how to deal with challenges, how to juggle everything from being a student athlete. So high school students do a lot, again, from that 7 to almost 7 at night. That's a lot for a student to have to
And you had a
work with.
pivot last minute or so. You had a pivot at the beginning of the school year because you weren't the AD in September.
Right. No, I just started in August,
Right.
August of 2021, and now transitioning, so getting adjusted.
It all
adjusting
kind of
adapting.
happened. It kind of did a learning curve in August and September both.
Yes.
Very good. Chad, all the best to you. Happy New Year, and all the best to you and your wife that went to Menchville High School.
Greg, thank you very much for the opportunity.
My pleasure, and I've known Chad for a long time here at Winston Thomas Nelson, a great community college as well. So I want to thank our guests for our January 2022 edition, Chris Zambis and Chad Smith, our wonderful crew here. Glad to be back in the studio. For Ray Price, I'm Greg Bicaveras. Thank you again for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.